We are back with episode number 12. That is 12 for all of you people
Woo!
who don't really know. That is episode 12. We made it to episode 12 of the Armstrong Avenue podcast with Scott Armstrong himself and me, Big Mike. I'm here also. What's up, dude? We had
Big
to take a
Mike.
week, man, but we are
Yep.
back.
Just a little road bump, and we are back. And
We are back.
that's
Everybody's going to be really happy. I know people have been hitting us up. Hey, when are y'all going to do another one? Right now. we had a little had like you said a little road bump, but we're here. We're back. Armstrong Avenue. It's going to be a good episode, man.
Yep, it's good to be back, and again, good to hear my dad, opening this show from today from 1980. What did we say? 3, I think. 2.
I think it's like 82, 83, I believe.
Yeah. To hear that, man, just starts me off good every time.
Every time. That's awesome. That's always awesome, dude. I've had a lot of people tell me they love it. They love hearing it. And even so, there's a whole Facebook group dedicated to fans of your dad, and I have joined it. And
that's awesome, man.
I kind of promote our podcast in there a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's mainly why I'm in it. But a lot of the pictures, I send you a bunch of pictures.
Honesty counts.
Yeah. Like so I send you a lot of pictures of pictures of you and your dad or you and your brothers, and it's these people find these photos or somewhere. I don't know where they get them, but they post them on there, and there's so many people who loved your family, man, and it's so good for me to see because I'm getting to hear these stories from you, and it's like I'm living this in this whole new world I never knew about.
I appreciate you saying that, man. It's very cool to he was legendary. He was to me, I know, but he was my dad. But after his passing a couple of years, to be able to see the outpouring of people like I know we talked about that tweet I did earlier. I think I did it yesterday. But the tweet about Sin Bodie had
Yes.
Made an action figure of my dad and actually sent me one. And you just, man, the likeness is so nuts. It's crazy. But it's
That's
just really
awesome.
cool because I've got his Hall of Fame ring. I've got the plaque they gave him. And now this action figure is such an unreal likeness that I put it right there with the Hall of Fame and the shrine.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. I love seeing it. I love that group is awesome. They're a bunch of great people, all of them from like Dothan. Every one of them from Alabama.
That's where we all got our starts, to tell you the truth. I mean, look, my dad was there from, I want to say 78 until, I'm sure he had just done some type of show there before his death. And he went for a long time. But the people that have the Facebook page, my daughter, she's a member of that Facebook page.
Oh, okay.
And she will send me a lot of times. If it's a picture she knows I haven't seen of my dad or my dad and us or my dad in his youth, she'll immediately send it to me. And I do have a Facebook. I just don't go to it very often. Well, I just don't.
Nobody go at him.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Don't be a creeper.
Yeah. She just always says, man, these people come up with the best pictures of granddad.
Yes. It's amazing, dude. I don't know where they find them.
There's a lot of pictures I've never seen before. So to all those people, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah. I actually had a guy reach out to me who's from Dothan, and he's a big fan, and he told me some stories about meeting your dad and how in like 2000, I think it was 2010, he ran into him and he was wrestling that night, and he said that he's made it to like his 6th or 7th decade of wrestling and he wants to do it again in 2020. It's like, it's just amazing that this guy just doesn't want to stop.
Yeah, my dad did not want to stop. That is for sure. I used to beg him to not. That's too far to drive. Don't go. Don't take mom. Please don't take mom. That's too far. And, we're okay. No, we're just going to sit in the house anyway. And now that he's gone, and once I'm older, I realize, wow, he just really didn't want to sit at the house all the time. He really loved going to be in the locker room and hearing the guys talk. And look, I don't care when you're in your early 20s and you're in the locker room, you're talking all that smack like it's the first time anybody's ever heard it. And then you get to be my age or as old as my dad was, still walking into those locker rooms and being on those shows with those young guys. And you hear the young guys saying it and you realize, wow, about 40 years ago, I was him. I was the one jacking my jaw and just running it like
Yeah,
a champ. And the old dudes were looking at me going, look at that goof. He has no clue. We were saying the same gaga
that's
20 or 30
awesome.
years earlier.
That's
So
awesome.
it does. Look, on the outside, you just get old. But on the inside, mentally, it's fun to feel young for a couple hours in that
Yeah.
locker room. I don't care what locker room it is. It will always do it to you, make you feel good.
Uh, I mean, speaking of locker rooms, um, I got to ask you this question. This is probably the most wanted to know answer because there's been rumors floating around social media. I've tried to shoot some of them down. They're just everywhere. You know how social media is. We seen you last weekend at the Impact tapings for their emergence taping and things like that. We seen you refereeing the match. We heard you were backstage producing. Have you signed a contract with Impact?
So the answer is no, I have not. I did not sign anything. Look, they treated me like royalty. I cannot uh, speak highly enough about the way I was treated while I was there from the very top, from Scott Demore to his writers to his producers to his talent. I was I was treated open arms and like I was one of the boys, and so it was it was awesome. It was great all the way around. It for me, where I'm at in my world right now, it wasn't the perfect fit, and that's look we said before uh, I actually went to do those shows, hey, let's date before we go steady, and
Yeah.
so I went off of that, and then we talked about it a couple of days. Just said, hey, look, it's not a breakup if we never went steady. You know what I mean? So uh, it just look, I had the opportunity to be in a different locker room for the first time, and my gosh, I was with WWE for a grand total, I think, of about 16 years. So to be in another locker room, and again with young people and young minds, and um, hear a match being put together with in so many dives in it that you just go, oh man, and then you realize, hey, that's where the business is today, and
Yeah.
so. Um, I want to see the dives. We've talked about that. I want to see the wrestling and I want to see the dives. There's a place for all of it.
Yeah.
Um, but to hear the young guys and their passion, it literally is no different from when I started 39 years ago. There's no difference whatsoever. The passion I had at the time, I was able to literally, here I was 39 years later, and sit in that locker room and look, come on, man. Everybody's not breaking an arm to sit right next to an old dude. You know what I mean? They're just not. But a few did, and it was a blessing. I knew a lot of people who had that I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that locker room, that our careers have crossed paths, and so I mean, to sit with next to Eric Young and just talk and laugh about life. I mean, I've known him a
Yeah.
long time, and that was awesome. But and to get to know the new guys, and look, I hadn't seen Trey Miguel in a long time, and so to be able to see him and shoot the breeze with him a little bit, and just the look, I could go on all this entire podcast, but the timing in my world and the way it was all working, it just wasn't the fit for me, and
Yeah.
so we didn't break up. We just there was a mutual respect and look that like I said, I couldn't. I know it's better for our podcast if I go, oh, that one guy did so. It's just not the way it was. I mean,
Yeah.
I literally was treated, when I tell you treated like royalty, that's exactly how it was.
Yeah.
Truly looked out for and taken care of. And And so, do I appreciate the opportunity? Yes. There was an open door left. So if something happens or whatever, or like we've talked about, Mike, everything in the wrestling business is
Yep.
timing. Everything is, and I don't care
Everything.
what anybody says. Timing it's everything, and I think we've talked about that on this podcast. So maybe the timing's right in the future.
Yeah.
I don't rule it out. I know I was told that's not ruled out by either party. So again, great human beings, great to see them. Look, Scott D'Amore is the guy. I mean,
Yeah.
and he and I, we talked about it on this trip. He and I were in the locker room of WCW when he was 18 years old, and he was senior in high school and skipped school to go make the WWE shows. I'm sorry, WCW shows way back in the day. And so when I was with WCW, and there I was already in my 30s, sitting in that locker room, here's a kid 18 years old who fast forward all these years, and now he's runs Impact. It's all,
Yeah.
man, I love this business. And
Yeah.
and so we laughed and talked about that. And look, he good dude, treated me like gold. Have nothing at all I could say negative. And I know our podcast needs that.
Well, not always. Not
I just
always.
can't do it, man. He's a good dude. His staff, Lou D'Angeli, who's a dude that's a friend of mine and just a great guy. And all of a sudden I'll look and I said, Lou, oh my, so many people that Lou was like a major player with Cirque du Soleil for like, oh my gosh, well over a decade. But anyway, now, and so he's with Impact, and there's things I did not know. You know what I mean? I walked in there blind, but looking forward to a new, a new opportunity. I know we're human beings and we don't like change, but sometimes change is always good. I don't care what anybody says, because it makes you step up. And so, but in my life, it just wasn't the time. As simple as that. And so, I loved doing it. To be asked to referee the Jordynne Grace Mia Yim match. Oh my gosh, dude. At first I said, oh, honored. I'd be happy to. And then I took a step back and thought, wait a minute, man. It's been a long time since I refereed at a higher level. You know what I mean? And pay-per-view matches, they're the highest level the company has to offer at that time, and I don't care what company it is, because it's a pay-per-view match or whatever. I don't know what they call them nowadays.
Premium live event.
Hey, yeah. And so, little did I know. Look, you know what a false finish is: 1, 2, kick out, right?
Yeah.
And so, usually in a match, there might be 4 or 5. Okay, I knew I could still do that, but they had about 13. I really don't know how.
Ooh, you was blown up, weren't you?
I just know I was blown up, dude. I hadn't done it in so long, and truth be known, I had just had COVID. Look, I had the 2 shots and 1 booster. I didn't have the 4th boost, and I got COVID, and I swear I thought I was going to end up in the hospital. But anyway, that's beside the point. I'd been down for like 8 days, and I mean down. And then all of a sudden, here came the show, and I'd tested negative like 2 days earlier, but I just didn't have it in me to get out and start and do the cardio. And then I get there, and they asked me to do that match, and I looked at my brother later. I went, hey man, I'm not sure I can do this. And he starts laughing. He goes, well, of course you can, man. And so the match, it went a good while. I don't know how long, it was 16, 17 minutes. It went a good while. And so we're at about the halfway mark of that match. And I start, instead of thinking in my head about, okay, breathe and stay out of their way. And, the things that go through your head when you're actually refereeing a live match on camera. All of a sudden I found myself start getting into the match. And even though I knew the outcome, the the back and forth, I specifically asked them, I don't want to know. I want to, I want to, I want to feel this, and let the audience feel that that's a real referee doing you know what I mean? I don't know any foregone. We'll do this side of the corner, do that before we ever get to the finish. So I'm literally, man, just trying to keep it in perspective, but loving every minute of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They really, oh man, they worked hard. Those two ladies went hard, and it was, man, such a pleasure to be a part of and work with those. I've never been in the ring. You had mentioned earlier about Mia. You said, "Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
worked with her before." Well, I have, but it was all behind the scenes at NXT. I never got in the ring with her. I mean, other than to show moves like at the Performance Center or something like that. But I never refereed
Yeah.
anything. You know what I mean? At the Performance Center. We had a team of referees for that. But anyway, but Jordynne, I'd only met one other time, and that was the week earlier at the Ric Flair, or 2 weeks earlier maybe, at the Ric Flair last match.
Yep.
And I met her for the first time, and then fast forward a couple of weeks, and here we are on that show, and it was cool to come back and know that I was in there with some young people that could go, and then to get back in the locker room and just sit down and just start taking it all in my head, thinking about, wow, 20 years ago. They gave me an Impact hat. And so I wore the hat a lot of the night. And then when I took it off and saw the back of it, it said 20 years. And so I started thinking back, wait a minute, man, 20 years. I was here.
Yeah.
I was at TNA 20 years ago. And it's progressed until it turned into, now it's Impact. Yeah. And you just, it was mind blowing, dude, to sit in that locker room and look around at all the young guys and I say not old guys at all. I mean, it was, Luke Gallows and Machine Gunka and to be able to see those dudes and Eric Young and then the young guys that are just getting started in their careers. And man, it was cool to feel all that and know that I was in that locker room 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It was awesome. And it was definitely in a different place.
Yeah. 20 years ago, you got to see the start of arguably one of the greatest careers of a wrestler of all time, and AJ Styles. In-ring talent, the phenomenal one. And now 20 years later, somebody I think could possibly follow in his in his footsteps, Mike Bailey, Speedball Mike Bailey, phenomenal.
Yeah,
really good.
He was there. He was there on the Impact show, and he's talented, dude. That kid's talented, and the people love him. So you're right, man. Start watching that career now.
Yeah, for sure. I have been watching him on his wrestling Revolver shows, his GCW tapings, and as well as Impact. And every time I see him, I'm just blown away by the talent, how young he is.
He has the opportunity to work with some really great. I mean, look, he was in the ring with some really good talent at Impact. So, look, working with people better than you always makes you better because you always have to. You step up or you eat the bullet of a crappy match. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the truth. So 20 years ago in TNA, so I'm gonna have a couple questions about the locker room environment for Impact. But my first one is, how does it compare now to what 20 years ago you were in that locker room of TNA, which was originally NWA TNA?
Yeah, it was
back in the day.
It was. So look, Jeff Jarrett and his dad kind of had the head deal there. They were the head guys, and Jeff was who originally contacted me to come to TNA, and I had been like WWE, I guess F at the time, had taken over WCW. Were they WWE then, Mike, or do you remember? I don't remember.
During when TNA started, so that would be
No. When they took over WCW.
I think they were the E then. I think they had
Okay.
just transferred over, or they were about to transfer over to the E. It was right about that time when they started doing that, when everything was changing up.
I truly can't remember, dude. I can't. I'm sitting here trying to think of it. Anyway, where were we going here? I've already lost my no.
The comparisons between TNA, the
Oh yeah.
locker room in 2002.
So it was like the new look. Once you've when you work for WCW, we were going through the Monday Night Wars for the past how long? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so wrestling was super hot, and then all of a sudden so in the people's minds there were two companies. There was WWE and WCW, and that was it. And so to have this new once Vince took it over, WCW, I mean, it opened the world to, well, now anybody else. They'll just be anybody else, but it's a real good chance to start something. And so, the Jarrett family are synonymous with wrestling. And so they somehow got it all hooked up. And I get a phone call and, hey, you want to come be a part of this? And I said, yes, I do. I mean, right off the bat, like the first, I don't know, show or two, I refereed Jeff Jarrett against Toby Keith. It was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. And
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, yes, dude. It was even better than that. It was in Huntsville, Alabama. So
wow,
Toby Keith had a huge following, man. I mean,
as far as that drew
in the wrestling building. Oh yeah, it did real good. But that's the kind of, look, if you're going to kick something off, kick it off. Don't stumble, because once you stumble out of the gate, man, it hurts. And so, the Jarrett family, they did not stumble. They got behind it, and it started going. And I would just happen to be there for that first year. And it was, look, AJ was just getting started. Rudy Charles was the referee, and now he's with WWE, and he literally, they said, hey, Scott, this kid helps us a lot around the office. Can you teach him to referee? I said, well, yeah, can he count to three? But yeah, and Rudy's still there, and a great family. You know what I mean? That's the cool spot now where I'm at in my world. I can look around and see the wrestlers, and I knew them when, and now they've gotten married, and now they have kids, and you realize, hey, look, we're all just doing our own thing, yet we all get together and work as one family. And so I say that to talk about the dressing room today at Impact.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like. It's all young people, well, mostly young people, and they're all just, we can do this, and they're talking about matches they'd seen in the past, and the superstars, and it was all about wrestling. When I say that, look, there are other locker rooms I've been in where it's all about video games, and guys are playing video games, and I mean, look, there's cliques everywhere, and in every form of life you can see, my son works for a lawyer's office, and you see that office, and some of the lawyers go out together. And I told my son, I said, no, that's no different than anything in life, and wrestling is no different than that. Cliques happen, and there are cliques. And so, you got a group of guys over here talking about movies, and a group of guys over here talking about wrestling. And look, that's the locker room, man. You know what I mean? There's a camaraderie. Unless you have a bunch of small locker rooms, and if you have that, you'll find me in one. I
know that's right.
I love a small locker room, man. I get in there and just do my own thing. But
some of these indie shows I've booked, it's one locker room, and it's just guys, girls, everybody in one room, and it's like,
so Mike,
let's hang a curtain up.
Yeah, right. Yes. So I'll tell you a story about the last show in Thomaston that we did. the week before or 2 weeks before, I had done the Continental Reunion in Dothan, Alabama, and when I got to the show that night, I refereed Camille Brickhouse, her match in the main event and for the ladies championship, the NWA ladies championship. So as I get there, one of the boys in the locker room had, those chairs that you buy at Walmart for like, I don't know, $8, and you just kind of open it up and it's a seat and you kind of just sit down in it.
The camp chair.
Yeah, camp chair. Yes, thank you. And so one of the boys had one of those, and I said, "Hey, dude, did you bring that yourself?" And he goes, "Yeah, there's just never enough chairs in the locker room." And I just started laughing and looked at him and I said, "Bro, I'd like to apologize for me being such a dumbass." I said, "You're one of the most brilliant guys I've ever met." and he started laughing. Dude, I literally the next day went to Walmart and bought one of those camp chairs. I've already used it one time in the locker room because, there's never, on the indie shows, there's just never enough chairs. And so you can ask William Regal. There's a big issue, old school wise, about having a chair in the locker room, and then you put all your stuff down beside it. You might drape a shirt over the back of the chair, put your shoes or your flip-flops right there at the foot of the chair, and then you walk out and come back in and there's a dude sitting in that chair. And the old school way, you literally would have gotten out of that chair and probably not dressed in the locker room for a month. I mean, that's how it was handled. Nowadays, nobody seems to care. And, you just can't call guys out anymore like you could back then. You know what I mean? Hey, look, times change. I understand. I need to change with it.
Somebody got kicked out of a locker room for eating chicken. The Miz.
That's happened.
But no, man, that's good to hear. Because I've never been in one of the larger promotions locker rooms, just the Main Event Wrestling from Georgia locker room, and of course, I'm just the guy who promotes the shows. I'm not. I just walk in and everybody's like, "Oh, there's Mike."
Right.
But I'm like, no, all those people out there wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. You guys didn't bring none of them people. Okay, they don't even know who you are. And I'll be happy to tell them that.
I love it.
And I think Dwayne did tell him that at the show, July 23rd. He said, "You see that crowd? That was Mike."
I love it.
But
it was a good crowd too. Hey, and speaking of Dwayne, let's plug it.
IWN. Actually, it is live, guys. You can go download the IWN app right now on your phone.
Yes, you can.
Which you can see this podcast, the Armstrong Avenue podcast, brought to you by IWN, sponsored by Bones Coffee, as well as our newest sponsor, Collar and Elbow. For both of them,
ladies and gentlemen, after 12, this is the 12th episode, and we have 2 sponsors and IWN. So rocking and rolling, moving forward.
Hey,
minor hiccup, we're not looking backwards. We're only looking forward.
We're gonna keep moving. Hey, we still got some momentum. People still love us.
So Mike, we got to tell them about the code for Bones Coffee.
It's Armstrong. It's the same code for Collar and Elbow and Bones Coffee. So you can get your coffee, you can get your nice T-shirts, hoodies, whatever from Collar and Elbow. Always support the wrestling brand. And Bones Coffee for all of your caffeinated drinks. You can get the K-Cup pods, or you can get ground coffee or the whole bean if you're into that. If you're one of them people who has the time to grind your own beans and French press your coffee. And I don't have that time. I throw the cup in the pod.
Yes. And enjoy it. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I was just at the Impact Emergence. I saw one of the guys from Collar and Elbow, and it was cool to shoot the breeze. And now, here we are.
Yeah, I think that might have worked.
As a sponsor. No, we had the sponsorship before I saw him.
I know. So, I actually told him about that. I said, you're going to see, because he's like, I got to go to, because he said, if you give me all your information, I can get you your code tonight. But I got to go to Emergence this weekend. I said, well, say hey to Scott for me.
He did, and gave me a T-shirt too.
Damn, he didn't give me a T-shirt.
Yeah, he we talked a long time, man. Again, talking about impact, it literally was a lot of fun for me personally. The next day, produced a match, and it was just every bit of it was awesome. The only negative to the entire trip, and I know people can't wait to hear it, was that we had a 6-hour delay on our flight in Atlanta.
That's Hartsfield Jackson.
Me and my brother, yes.
That's Hartsfield Jackson.
And
ain't much you can do.
No, eat,
Yeah.
tweet.
You could have gotten you could have called me. I would have taken you to Fellini's.
Hey, did you see my hold on, let me get my shirt. Leverage, strike, drive, finish.
Oh, okay.
That's my Duke Manyweather. See,
Duke Manyweather.
So Duke Manyweather is like, he's the guru, the offensive line guru with pro football. And so he will, that's where like these college offensive linemen, college kids, and the pros, they have camps once football's over. And
oh yeah.
And he's the guru, man. He's, not to mention, one of the toughest human beings ever. He tore both his legs and ended up in a wheelchair with his legs straight out. And he was down for a while. And so, anyway, double tough. Then I was always hoping I could get him tickets to Mania. And then this past year, needless to say, I was released early January, and Mania was beginning of April. So I, needless to say, was not there. And all of a sudden, I start getting text messages from Duke, and it's him backstage. And I don't mean with the guy that hung the light in the far corner of the building. I mean, he's with all the top stars of WWE backstage. I went, man, who do you know now? He's a good dude. Anyway, follow him on Twitter if anybody has a chance, so you'll see who I'm talking about.
That's awesome.
Duke Manyweather, M-A-N-Y, Manyweather.
That's awesome. So going back to the locker room here at Impact, how does it compare not only to the former TNA but to other locker rooms that you have been a part of, like the bigger locker rooms? How does it compare to those?
So look, these are things I'm sure people have never thought about, but with bigger arenas or venues, whatever the word you want to use, the bigger it is, the more rooms they have in the back. Yeah. From a big, huge room that's got sofas in it and a TV and the whole nine, to the smaller rooms that would be enough for 3 people. And in the bigger arenas, those are stadiums, those are multiple. So you get, in the bigger buildings, you have a lot more separation. Look, you work with somebody every day. Look, for the listeners that are listening to this, if you're one of the people that work around a lot of people every day, I feel that somewhere during the week, if they said, hey, guess what? Today you just don't have to work in the middle of everybody, you might take advantage of that. And so a lot of times guys do, you know what I mean? They take advantage of that and have their own locker room. And we used to just find out who was in there and put a note on the door of who was in there. And that way, if you were looking for somebody, you didn't have to go to 12 locker rooms, you know what I mean? You just find them. But look, I would be lying if I didn't say WWE is the mecca. That's my opinion. Only my opinion. Everybody else can say, no, AEW. Say whatever you want to. When you are a multi-billion dollar, not million, billion-dollar company, and you are openly traded on the stock exchange. So you or I right now during this podcast could actually buy shares in WWE. When that's going on, you're the grand poobah. You know what I mean? You're the champion. Yeah. You win. So everything else is like trying to get there. You know what I mean? All the other promotions they say, I don't want to be WWE, but they dang sure want that money. You know what I mean? I can't, if they say they don't, then they're not in business. Look, having multiple companies is always good for the boys. always, competition will always benefit the talent. And so uh, I love the fact that there's multiple companies. Uh, at the end of it, though, no matter whether you're WWE, AEW, Impact, uh, IWN, it doesn't matter. Walk in that locker room and just listen for a minute, and you'll end up hearing the total love of wrestling. Because look, ain't nobody working a 9 to 5 and then going, oh man, I can drive 4 hours now and wrestle in the main event in wherever Georgia and make, half the money I made today working. Nobody wants to do that, man. You spend more money on your gas than you'd be, wrestling for nothing, for losing money. And although I know people that have done that, I think I've done it a time or two on some of the indies back in the day. But it's just, man, it blows my mind because it's all about the love of wrestling. And so
Yeah.
there I was 20 years ago, and that's how it was. It was a 20-year-old, a 20-year younger R-Truth, Ron Killings, and I refereed Ron against Ken Shamrock for the NWA World Title, and Truth won, and I got to be the one to count to three and hand him the title, and I always appreciated sharing that moment with him because if you truly know R-Truth, he is a good human being. I mean, I've had some of the best times of my life with that dude, and the most laughs and road trips, and he's just a part of my family. I mean, he and my brother are super tight, and so a road dog, and so to be able to referee that match, and then 20 years later be in that locker room again and hearing the drive for wrestling, and then being able to referee another championship match within that organization, transformed multiple times, but nonetheless 20 years later, just, man, for me personally, it's a career spot. You know what I mean? There's things that if somebody says, hey, what's some cool stuff that happened to you? That's one of the things I would say. It was really cool. But back to timing, you know what I mean? The timing it's just timing. You know what I mean? That's the only reason I didn't sign with them. Everything else was there. But the locker room was, man, same. 20 years, same. You know what I mean?
It's really the same as any other locker room you're around.
It is. It is, man.
Just different faces.
Just different faces, and higher and higher dollar amounts in different locker rooms. You know what I mean? But hey, at the end, the dollar. Look, it's cool to make 500 grand a year and be a top guy in a company. That's cool, and it's cool to be a main event guy with a smaller company and be okay with whatever you're making there. That's cool too. That person will always strive to be the one that makes the other money, the 500 grand or more. But when they walk in that ring, I can tell you this for sure. When they walk in that ring, the last thing they're thinking about is, oh gosh, I made such and such such and such money last week. They're thinking about, this is cool. This is awesome. I love this. I promise that's the way they feel. And then, after the match, they come back and they've got a great sweat and they're buzzed for the performance that they gave, or either they're down on themselves. And look, when I was a producer, you talk them off the ledge or you literally pat them on the back, but you always found something to talk about that would make the next match better. You know what I mean? And so I saw that exact same thing with Impact. Guys have a great match, come back happy, fired up, just gassed. And then you see the guy that didn't have such a great match come back hanging his head down. But what you always saw was the producer jump in and everybody talk about how to make it better. And so when you look at the locker room from that aspect, again, all the same.
Yeah. That's incredible. So you kind of mentioned that you ran into some people there. Were there any standouts? Anybody that really stood out to you? Um, put on a great match or surprised you in any way?
Um, yeah, their champion, and God, man, now I'm just, oh, what is their champion's name? You got to find it, Mike. I've
Josh
literally,
Alexander?
Josh Alexander. That dude can. That dude is a ring technician. He's good, man. He's real good. And so to see, uh, I didn't really know his work. I think he's Canadian. I think that's right. And so
Yes.
um, I really didn't know his work. And so to see him um, have the match that he had, and they were right after the Jordynne Grace Mia Yim match that I'd
Yeah.
refereed. And so and when I'm telling you, those ladies, they got the "This is awesome" chant a couple of times. I mean, it was awesome. And so um, to have to follow that match was like, ooh, man, I wouldn't. In my mind, when the match started, I thought I wouldn't want to be those guys, because if you can't, you're in the main event of this pay per view or whatever. So how do you follow that? And man, they did, and got multiple. This is awesome. The crowd in Chicago that night was on fire. They were. So hats off to the city of
Yeah.
deep dish pizza. But it was that dude's good, and so I'm looking forward to see what the next step is in his career. You know what I mean? I mean, look, he's the Impact champion, and he is a ring technician. So I look forward to watching. You know what I mean? Same thing with Jordynne Grace. I think she's just getting started in the business. As far as I know, I just don't know of her, and I claim ignorance. You know what I mean? But I look forward to watching her career too. She's strong and she's agile, and she's just got a different look than everybody else. So she stands out. And in the industry today, if you don't stand out, you're just another dude. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, you see guys at the gas station, they look like a lot of wrestlers, but they can't wrestle. You know what I mean? If it was easy, everybody would do it. And so I ran it. I literally was a part of Sammy Callahan and oh God, Steve Macklin. Is that it?
Yeah.
Macklin.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm horrible. I should have made notes. Um, but they had a heck of a match, and it was, man, just crazy. And they did some crazy stuff. And so, and I had, Sammy Callahan was at NXT for a
Yeah.
while, so I got to know him there. And so to see him again, and I think he's just coming back off an injury, but man, still same heart, same dude. The way he felt about wrestling at NXT, and then fast forward years later, and the way he feels about wrestling now. And I love that, man.
Yeah.
I do. I love it. I love to see it and hear about it, because look, sometimes money will take the edge off, and I'm guilty. I mean, I'm telling you for a fact, I'm guilty of it. So um, then you see a up and comer showing up to take your job, and it makes you kick into the next gear, or attempt to. You either do, you don't. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was cool to see Sammy still with his heart where it dang sure ought to be. It was
That's
awesome.
right. So you had said you ran into some people that you knew from previous years in the business, such as Scott Moore and others. Was there anybody else that you ran into? I know Action Mike Jackson does a lot with Impact, but I don't know if he was there at that tape, and I just know he does some
No,
with
he
him.
wasn't there. He wasn't there that day. No, to get to see, like, look, Gail Kim. I mean, such a
Oh yeah.
sweetheart of a human being, and D'Lo. Oh my God, I love D'Lo Brown. D'Lo, I've known since when he first started with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I mean, I don't even know how long ago. That's how long it was, and so cool to see him. And Tommy Dreamer. I mean, man, what's not to love? I've
Yeah.
spent a lot of years in locker rooms with that guy, and just his attitude towards the business, and the way he is in the locker room. Look, if I owned a wrestling company, I would hire Tommy Dreamer just to, he wouldn't even have to wrestle. He'd just be in the locker room. He's so good for morale because he is such a fun, good-hearted human being. And so it was awesome to hug his neck and just talk old times. I mean, he's like a family. My entire family, like if I say Dreamer, they all just it resonates. You know, oh Tommy.
Yeah.
Then let's see. You know, I know the listeners don't know this. There's two people at Impact that look, you sit back because you worked for such a, the Mecca for so many years. And then you get an opportunity to go to a new place and you sit back and watch. And I watched, there were two people that, when I say stood out, I mean, they were a hinge, like a hinge on a door for Impact. And look, again, this is just my opinion on first sight. I was there 2 days. So it's not like I'm there every week and I see this over and over and over. But this jumped off the page. Excuse me. One was the floor manager that's out on the floor with the headset on, that is literally the director while everything's happening at once. This person, I don't care what company this person's with, this person has, the person in this position has to know everything of what's next. When the announcer talks, when this, I mean, and I wish to God I knew this girl's last name, and I don't, but her name was Ingrid. And anybody listening, Ingrid from Impact, she is not in front of the camera, she's behind it. I mean, any other company that needs a good person, she's unreal. Again, another person that I would just hire immediately if I owned a wrestling company. And then another dude, Johnny Bravo. And on Twitter, he is John E. Bravo. And I mean, good dude, great at his job. And so for me to sit back and just, I literally know the people that hold those exact positions that were at NXT. I know the people that hold those positions that were WWE main roster. And so, because it's two different television shows, right? So I literally would, these people, they fit right in with the top of the line. I'm telling you, they were great. And I'm ashamed of myself. You know what? I'm going to look up Ingrid while we're talking. Look, at the end of the day, you just want people that can tote the load, so to speak, that can pull the wagon. And those two people are major players in Impact that help pull that wagon. And I don't know, man. I just I know those the people.
Ingrid. I'm gonna butcher this. Isley. She's at CanAm_Ingrid on Twitter.
And that's her.
And that is her, floor director for Impact Wrestling.
That's her.
Proud pity mom. Speaking of pity, my dog is going crazy because my wife is getting in. If you guys can hear that, my dog, my pit bull, Roscoe, or Bubba, is barking like crazy.
We gotta have that dog on the show one day.
Let me look, he'll just come sit in my lap. Like I'll be sitting here trying to talk to you, and he'll be here. And all you hear is him licking me.
I'm going to ask you the question.
Like, Roscoe, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
And he'll probably just look at me.
That's awesome.
He's fun, man. He's awesome. He's 7 years old this year. Best dog I've ever had. Literally the best dog I've ever had. Yeah, he's so protective of my son and my daughter. Like, awesome. My son wants to wrestle. My son he watches wrestling with me, so he's constantly getting in the bed. Daddy, you want to wrestle? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. And we'll get and he'll be on top of me, and then I'll pick him up, throw him on the bed or something. I've had like nearly chunks of my ear taken out by my dog. I'll have to let him know real quick. I'm not the one to mess with.
Yeah,
I'll feed you. Like, you bite somebody else, not me. But he's great, best dog ever. But man, so before we get out of here, I do have a hashtag Ask Scott segment brought to you by Bones Coffee Company.
And is it just
and
Bones?
Collar and Elbow and Collar and Elbow
and
IWN. So Donnie D on Twitter, hashtag Ask Scott. How emotional of a segment was it for you during Smoky Mountain Wrestling when you finally unmasked? I remember that segment very vividly. It was
me too. Me too.
I think we've spoken about this segment on here before with Jim Cornette, and it was a great segment.
So that segment had been a year in the making. I mean, the year earlier is when Cornette sat me down and my father and laid out the entire year of booking. And nowadays we talked about that. Nowadays you just don't see that. But he said, I'm going to have you wear the mask. You will be a character. You will be Dixie Dynamite. And he said, it'll be like a kid's gimmick or whatever. And he said, we're going to get you over with the kids, and you'll be early on the shows. First couple of matches. And he said, we want to establish you. The entire time that we're establishing you on TV, we're establishing your dad as the figurehead of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, the commissioner. And so he said, we'll do things over time. He said, you'll just keep chugging along through the year. You'll get, you'll win on TV and whatever. And we'll push Dixie Dynamite. But in the main event stuff, we will always include Bullet Bob as the official, the head guy with Smoky Mountain. If he said somebody's suspended, by God, you don't see them. You know what I mean? So, so he said at the, about the year mark, it will intersect where Jim would come into play, and he calls me on it and says, Scott Armstrong, I know who that is under that mask. That's Scott Armstrong. And he wears that mask because he's so ashamed that his dad is Bob Armstrong. And dude, I'm going to tell you something. You don't say stuff like that in the South. You didn't back then. And so
for sure.
So literally before that segment, Cornette came and just me and him. And he told me, he said, hey, I want you to think everything that I just explained on this podcast is exactly what he told me. He said, look, this is the culmination of all of it to get to this point to where we end up doing the Armstrong's Army against Cornette's, I don't know, crooks or whatever they were. And so he said, I want you to think about this before you cut this promo, because he and I were doing the promo, and then my dad was going to come in to break it up. And so he said, I want you to think about that. And I want you to think in your heart, how would that feel if he said, look, I know it's a TV show, but how would it feel if somebody looked you in the eye and said, yeah, you wear that mask because you're ashamed of your dad. He said, I know you, and I know your family, and I know how y'all, all the boys, feel about your dad. And he said, so I know y'all are all tight. So I want you to think about that. Well, I started thinking about it, and it was emotional. It was like, wow, man, I would want to fight. You know what I mean? I would want to fight somebody. And so, but in that segment, I couldn't do that. All I could do, and ended up getting a lump in my throat and and tried to really, I felt it. And so I felt like it came across like that on camera. To guys, it would come off as, that's a little nerdy, but to kids, because that was my gimmick. And now we were tying kids in with the adults that had gotten behind my father. You see the picture they were drawing?
Yeah.
The young guy, the guy with the mask on that had the kids following, and the old dude with the adult following. And now you tie them together. And not only do you tie them together, it's family. Holy crud, man. You can't get any more babyface than that. And that's the mind of Jim Cornette. It was all his idea. And we went, man, that, a year earlier, that's going to be fun. And it was, man. We had great times. I know I just told the story a week or so ago about the fireworks.
Yeah.
That was Smoky Mountain, man. It really was. It was great. I mean, we
Yeah.
loved it. But anyway, I hope that answers Donnie D's question.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. I'm gonna let him know that we're gonna be answering it on this episode that drops today, which is tomorrow. So
It's today, it's yesterday, it's tomorrow.
yeah, it's then, now, and forever.
No, we don't want to take that at all. We're Armstrong Avenue.
Yep, exactly. Oh man, well, this was a good one, man. I'm glad we got to talk about your time at Impact and how much fun you had, and how it really hasn't changed from NWA total nonstop action and the 6-sided ring to Impact.
Mike, I was prior to that.
You were before the 6-sided ring.
The 6-sided ring. Yes.
Yeah, that was a crazy time with the 6-sided ring.
Yes,
And
it
then
was.
the X division match where they were up in the air on the X. It was Rhino and AJ Styles in the very first one. If you ever watched that match, it wasn't really much of a match. It was more like two guys trying to hold on for dear life.
You just described my entire career. Just trying to hang on for dear life.
Awesome.
Hey, dude, listen, Mike, first let me say thank you. Thank you for all you do for this podcast. I truly appreciate it, guys. Mike is he's the guy. Look, if you asked me to plug in a wire, I'd screw that up. So Mike is the everything. So I can't say thank you enough. I can't say thank you enough to IWN, the Independent Wrestling Network. They're responsible for all of this. They make it happen. And so don't forget to go to the App Store and download IWN. Look under wrestling, IWN, and you'll be amazed with what's going on with that app. It's awesome. Thank you again to Collar and Elbow. Thank you again to Bones Coffee. Don't forget, with both those, please use the code Armstrong and get some cash off your order.
Yep.
So
it's I believe it's 10% and 15%, I believe, is how that works. I think.
Don't get me doing the gazentas, 2 gazenta 2 and 3 gazenta 3. I don't know how to do all that. But I do want to say thank you to all those people. I really do appreciate it, man. I appreciate
for sure.
The people that are put in my path.
Yep, that's right. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to be back next week with episode 13. Don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll figure it out.
Lucky 13, baby.
Lucky number 13. We are working towards it. As always, you can find Scott on Twitter at WWE Armstrong. You can find me. I am at Big Mike the host. Make sure you give me a follow. I have been getting into posting about a lot of wrestling as well as my other passion, which is football. If you are into fantasy football, I can answer some serious questions about why you should draft this guy and why you should not take the dumb flyer that I did on Michael Thomas. We just had we have a wrestling fantasy draft I'm a part of. 18-team league. It was awful. There's so many teams. Nobody got to do what they wanted to do. It was awful. But guys, follow us. Follow the podcast, Armstrong Avenue Pod. I'm going to get it out. And then go over, like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube. Go download the IWN app. We're going to get out of here. That's Scott Armstrong. I'm Big Mike, the host. Thanks, out. Guys.